Hi, athletes and coaches. We are really sorry that the live event didn't happen last week, and we wanted to find a way to bring a version of what you would have experienced. And we know it's not the same as being in person, but we're actually hoping we can make a live event happen next track season. So I'm Kara Bazzi. I'm the co-founder and clinical director and the director of the exercise and sport program at Opal Food and Body Wisdom. We are an eating disorder clinic in the University District that treats people's relationship to food and body image, sport and movement, and mental health. And I got into this field through my own personal journey with having an eating disorder while I ran cross country and track at the University of Washington. And now I have a high school daughter in the Metro League that runs cross country and track, and another daughter coming up as a freshman next year. And then my husband, David Bazzi, is the head cross country coach and head distance track coach for O'Day. And that is where my interest lies in having this event for you all. And I'm absolutely thrilled to be introducing you to Alison Mariella Dèsir and have you have the opportunity to meet her and learn from her as someone in our community who's doing great things to build inclusivity in the sport of running. So in this video, Alison will be reading a passage from her newly released book, Running While Black, followed by a brief question and answer time with me. And athletes, be sure to listen to the whole video as there's an opportunity to learn about a surprise giveaway for the first handful of you. So stay tuned throughout the video. Okay, Alison Mariella Dèsir is multi-talented. She's a founder, a doer, an activist, a connector, and an unapologetically straightforward communicator with a passion for community health. Alison came to running organically following a period of depression when a Black friend and role model trained for and completed a marathon. Alison is the author of Running While Black, the TV host and producer of Out and Back with Alison Mariella Dèsir, which is now streaming, and the host of Out and Back's companion podcast. Alison was named one of the Changemakers of 2023 by Well Plus Good, one of the Power Women of 2022 by Women's Running Magazine, and is one of the most influential African Americans aged 25 to 45 by the Root 100. Alison holds her BA in History, MA in Latin American and Caribbean Regional Studies, and a Master's in Education and Counseling Psychology, all from Columbia University. So now we get to hear from Alison reading an excerpt of her book.
Thank you, Kara, and hi, athletes. So sorry I missed you last week. I have a 3.5-year-old son, and if any of you have siblings, you know how the little ones are unpredictable and sick when you least expect it. But excited to have this reading with you, do some Q&A, and I absolutely want to come in person for track season next year, so we will be in touch. With that, I'm going to do a reading from a chapter of my book that's called Belonging, and it is relevant because I'm sharing my reflections from when I was in high school. Some of this might resonate with you. Some of this might be completely foreign to you. Whatever the case, I hope that you listen to understand and think about what feelings are coming up for you. By the time I was in high school, I knew I was at the wrong school. The majority of the kids were white and wealthy. I was Black and middle class. The white kids wore $300 jeans and were driven to school in Mercedes and BMWs. The idea of $300 jeans made my parents laugh, though I convinced them once to buy me a pair. My parents dropped me off in a Volvo, which made me feel poor and ashamed that my parents didn't have more money. So to fit in, I became the Black celebrity, the exceptional Black girl, the one everyone loved but truly didn't know. The building of this persona began a couple of years earlier in Mr. Anderson's math class. Mr. Anderson was Jamaican, Black, with a thin face, glasses, and short curly hair. He dressed in a suit and tie every day. We sometimes teased him for being nerdy, but we also loved him because he was fun. He'd grab the notes we tried passing in class and read them aloud, shaming us in a way that said he was in on the joke. He was the only Black staff member, other than the maintenance staff, and he took me under his wing. Every year during Black History Month, we would have an assembly where the story of Martin Luther King Jr. would be told, and we'd do the We Shall Overcome dance and pretend that racial tension ended in the 1960s. One day during rehearsal, Mr. Anderson, who knew I took singing lessons, said, "Why don't you sing for us?" I don't remember what I sang, Michael Jackson or something from the Jackson 5, but I remember slipping easily into the music, swaying as I sang, not worrying about how people saw me. My classmates' faces changed when they realized how good I was. It was validation. It was recognition. I could survive here by being good at everything. Mr. Anderson helped me get my math scores up. He encouraged me to go out for track. When I lined up that first day for a 100-meter time trial and beat all the girls on the team, I looked over at Mr. Anderson, who was the coach. We smiled at each other, mine in amazement, his out of pride. He had a deep belief in me that I could be good at anything, not because I needed to be twice as good, but because I was a gifted person. Mr. Anderson saw me as an individual, not a race, and he encouraged me to draw out all of the talent inside of me. My freshman year of high school, I already had a reputation as a smart, talented Black girl, and I ran with it. I played soccer and ran winter and spring track, all varsity, and earned myself a Letterman's jacket. I was captain of this and president of that. I was in all AP classes. I sang in a band. I performed for my classmates. I was always upbeat, always happy, always on. Senior year, I was voted most likely to succeed and most likely to be president. Everybody loved me. "Hey, Allie D," folks would shout in the hall. This was a genuine part of who I was. I had natural leadership ability. I was generally an upbeat person. I was studious, and I liked being busy. Powdered feet, like my dad had nicknamed me. But it also felt necessary. My white peers moved through the school with the ease that came with knowing they belonged there. Their presence was inherent. Mine felt conditional. I wasn't white, and we weren't wealthy, but damn it, I was smart and talented. It was proof that I deserved to be there. It was also essential in a world that kept reminding me I was separate from it. Reminders that came at me almost every day. My white peers told me that I talked white. They were confused about why a Black girl didn't speak Black. A few Black students on campus told me that I sounded like a Valley girl, that is, talked like a white girl, implying that I was doing so because I thought I was better than them. The Black students were associating me with whiteness, something that I too was being harmed by. The white students had such strong stereotypes of Black people, it never occurred to them that we were a diverse group with different accents and language depending on where we grew up. It was painful. I was just speaking the language I'd been surrounded by my whole life in the voice that came naturally to me, and people were telling me that I was pretending to be something else. In the halls or on the bus coming home from away track meets, students would be talking about whatever their parents were talking about or what was in the news. This was the 90s, so Haiti and Colombia were in the headlines. Then someone would shout out, "Hey, Allison, aren't you Colombian?" "Yeah, my mother's Colombian and my father's Haitian." A cry would ring out, "Oh, Haiti, gross. AIDS comes from there." "Is your family connected to Pablo Escobar?" "What do you know about cocaine?" "Everyone must be doing drugs down there." Such a violent place. My classmates didn't see me. They didn't see that they were making a caricature out of my people, out of me. They didn't see they were echoing stereotypes and messaging propagated by white news, white curriculums, and white supremacy. I didn't say anything to my classmates directly. Rather, I took solace in naming the problem. Junior year, we had to recite a poem to the class. Most of the students picked works by Sylvia Plath. I read a piece by African-American activist Jane Cortez called "There It Is." It equated white supremacy to Legionnaire's disease, a disease sprayed on people, poisoning minds with a lie about their superiority, that there was a right way. The poem allowed me to say words and phrases like ruling class, Ku Klux Klan, and penises out loud. I love the discomfort my teachers and classmates seemed to feel when faced with language and ideas we were not supposed to use. In composition class, I wrote an essay about not being seen as a reflection on the poem Harlem, A Dream Deferred by Langston Hughes. I read Maya Angelou's I Know Why a Caged Bird Sings, and I wrote about how I too felt caged by the white forces around me. I couldn't be me. I had to be the whitest version of me. I wasn't considered beautiful. Beauty was white, thin, and with long, straight hair. White people dominated our book lists, our history subjects. Our greatness, our achievements weren't reflected in the curriculum. With no classes that explored Black history, Black literature, or Black culture, there was no warmth, no recognition. What I craved was a sense of belonging. I wanted my heritage, the color of my skin, the beautiful aspects of Black culture, and the contributions of Black people to be part of the story. I wanted to be seen as a person, not a race. None of my classmates knew how I felt. There was the appearance of fitting in, but I had no sense of belonging. I read somewhere years later that fitting in is shaping yourself to try to match the space or people around you. But belonging is being yourself, being accepted for yourself, regardless of the space you are in or the people you are with. Belonging is being embraced and valued as your authentic self. I experienced such connections only as pockets of time, stolen experiences. It was how I felt sitting with the other Black kids back in public school and then the presence of Mr. Anderson in middle school. In high school, I found it among the maintenance staff, who were majority Black, African American, and Afro-Caribbean immigrants like my parents. The men, they were mostly men, took their break on the steps leading up to the lawn, and I'd watch as students and faculty walked by without acknowledging them, as if they were invisible, not even there, and I'd break the silence. Yo, what's up? I'd say. Allison, they'd grin back. Carl was a Jamaican man who did landscaping. Jim, a short, jovial African-American man who fixed things. I'd ask them about their kids. They'd ask about schoolwork. We students often left our book bags outside in piles on the lawns when we went for lunch. Whenever I came out of the building, Carl would be there holding my bag for me. I was particularly close to one man, Bud, a 6-foot African-American man with a stocky build and an easy laugh who worked as a school security guard. There was no shortage of times I would forget a book in my locker and return hours later when the buildings were locked. Bud and I would hug like old friends. He'd let me in the building, and on my way out, we'd catch up. He had a daughter who was a very talented softball player, and he'd show me photos from his wallet, tell me when her championship games were coming up. He'd tell me about the latest incident with one of the white parents, how they ignored him, treated him like they didn't have to listen to him. I'd shake my head, blown away by the complete disregard. He was always puffing me up. You're going to be somebody someday, he said. Don't forget me, he'd say. I could breathe in these moments. These men, by the simple act of seeing me, created space for me on campus. They told me that despite the surroundings, the white space, I did belong.
Thanks, Allison. So great. And I know we'll be talking a bit about belonging here. But first, in the spirit of getting to know you a little bit more for the athletes, I thought we could start by having you share your favorite experience as an athlete, whether it was back when you were in high school or younger, or in your adult life, where you felt joy and power.
You know, I used to love in high school, I was on the 4x4 relay team, and I loved it. We took ourselves so seriously, as you should, right? Like it's important. But I remember on the days of that we'd have a track meet, like we all wore our uniforms to school and we're so intense about our fueling and our hydrating. And then right before the 4x4, like that little pre-event meeting that we had, where it felt like the rest of our lives were riding on this moment. And I want to say that we knew that that wasn't true, but it was just so cool to be doing something so powerful with 3 people that I loved. And the 400 it's a long race, right? So there was so much, like every leg, there was joy in just seeing that we could gain a little more ground. And those are some of my favorite memories from track, the moments where I was competing with a team.
Yeah. Well, I think that those relay experiences really can give us that sense of belonging, that we're doing it for a group versus individually with the individual events. I'm curious in that way too, like, how you see belonging kind of play out or not play out within the experience of sport or within the experience of for track, like of any advice that you would have for these student athletes around how they can participate in a greater sense of belonging within their team. Like, what are those action steps or ways that athletes can help support that?
Yeah, I'm going to tell everybody a secret, and the secret is that no matter how old you get, you still feel like you're just figuring it out. Like you don't exactly know what's going on. And I'm saying that like about me and Carol, like in this moment, right? Like we're grown up people, but we still are just trying to figure life out. We're still sometimes trying to find somebody who will care for us, who will make us feel valued, right? So I say that to say that particularly at your age as high school students, just be kinder to people around you, right? Even I remember like thinking about even like the cool kids, the really cool kids, even they were struggling to figure out who they were and what they wanted to do with life and where they were going to feel valued, right? Like we are all struggling with these things. So I think being kinder to each other, being an upstander, if you see somebody who is always by themselves or who is maybe you see something happen where a person is treated poorly, be the person that goes and checks in on that person and just asks, how are you feeling now? Right? Like we each, by looking each other in the eyes and caring for each other, we can make such an impact on another person's life. So be that person. It's really cool to be an upstander and to look out for other folks.
Yeah, I totally agree. I also been reflecting on how track is such a unique sport in that it brings a lot of people with different backgrounds together, different genders, different sized bodies, different races. And as a mom with a student on the track team and going to a lot of track meets last spring, it just, I got to see all that diversity within the team. And yet, and I know you talked about this in the book, oftentimes the different kind of groups are segregated on the track team, and the throwers kind of stay with each other, the jumpers stay with each other, sprinters and distance runners. And so I feel curious to what kind of advice you might have in that regard, in terms of breaking through to different groups within the team, or even I think of at meets of getting to know kids from other teams, and what ways, what advice or encouragement would you give?
Yeah, what I would say is that there are so many opportunities out there to meet people who you might like or love or want to spend time with, but you'll never experience that if you don't take a chance by talking to somebody else, right? And this, I think about that, like when I was on the track team and the track and cross country, we practiced together, but I never spoke to those cross country kids. They were just like the kids who like to be in pain because their practices were so long and hard, and ours were hard, but they were quick, right? But we stayed with each other. But I think about, man, what are the possibilities? How many friendships did I miss out on? Or how many funny moments or deep moments, or how many stories of their childhood could I have connected with, right? So I think human beings of all ages, we're creatures of like habit, and we tend to stick around people who look like us and who think like us. But the beauty is actually in our difference, right? The beauty is in people with different upbringings sharing parts of their culture or their family story with you that unlocks something for you. So I challenge you to sit in a different seat on the bus, right? I always used to sit in the back, but if I could tell young Alison, sit another place on the bus, and maybe rather than like hiding out under the steps for your event to happen, go cheer for the throwers, right? Make intentional choices to try to get to know people, and you'll never regret getting to know somebody. There's
And
always
I would agree too, even just the power of giving somebody eye contact and saying hi or acknowledging their presence. As somebody who's an introvert and it was really shy and continues to be more just introverted around new people, just that act of showing the openness of giving eye contact and saying hi, or how are you doing, or how was that event? Like there's a lot you could even just be asking.
Or like celebrating somebody, maybe they like, wow, you did that thing. Like I know that coach was telling you to try something new and you tried it. Like, what was
Yeah.
that like, right? Like taking an interest in
Mhm.
people. And again, introverts may not come back. I'm clearly an extrovert, right? An introvert may not come back at you with the level of excitement, but you will have made an impact because you saw somebody, you engaged with somebody, and that's powerful.
Right. Cool. Um, let's see. One thing that you also are a big advocate for is for mental health,
Mm,
and knowing that we all, as human beings, have our own mental health strengths and our struggles.
mhm.
And knowing that, for a lot of high schoolers and adults, there's struggles with anxiety, with depression, with suicidal ideation. Is there anything that you'd want to share with these athletes about mental health, or something that you would want to have said to your younger self when it comes to mental health?
Yeah, that there are resources out there that you don't have to suffer in silence, right? I read this quote that I'm gonna get wrong, um, but it was something to the effect of, "I used to think I was the strangest person in the world, and then I learned that there were other strange people out there just like me, and that I wasn't strange at all." Right? Of course, each of us is unique and there's particular things about us, but ultimately, like, there's a universal shared struggle and shared joy. But what you're feeling, you're not the first person to experience that. You're not the only person to experience that. And you certainly don't have to experience that by yourself. There are people around you, your coaches, your PT, your parents. All of these people are resources for you. And I'm going to say this, your parents may not love it. Sometimes you don't want to tell your parents a thing, right? Like, that's why it's important for us to have multiple grown-ups around us. Sometimes it might feel too difficult to tell your parents. Tell your coach, tell your teacher, tell your principal, right? Like, enlist other people around you, and maybe you get back to your parents a little bit later. But you don't, I just want to avoid somebody being in the situation, well, like, my parents would kill me. I'm using quotes. Your parents wouldn't. Your parents love you. But if you feel that way, don't keep it to yourself. Find another person, an uncle, an aunt. Find another person who feels more comfortable, and get the support. And this is in struggle and also in joy. Maybe something incredible has happened to you and has made you want to rethink what your life plan is, and you're worried to tell your mom because your mom always thought you would be a lawyer, right? Find somebody who can celebrate that joy with you, and go down that path with you.
Yeah, yeah, and I would add to that too, just how much coaches care about you. Your
Mm,
coach cares deeply. I think I've gotten to meet a lot of coaches in the Metro League, and they really, really, really care. And they want to know who you are and what you're about and what you're going through. And they can sometimes maybe feel a little intimidating to reach out and say what you're struggling with, but this is why they're doing what they're doing. They're not doing it for money. They're doing it for their passion of
that's
coaching and being around high school students. So yeah,
Take advantage. It's a gift.
it is. It's such a gift. Totally. I guess maybe in a similar vein, is there any mantras or specific self-talk or tips that you would have for student athletes in
Mm,
this stage of life, for that sort of kind of related to mental health, but also just to performance and living as a high schooler, of
mm,
what are ways that we talk to ourselves?
mhm. Yeah, high school is now a little bit, a long time ago, kind of, but I remember feeling in high school like my world was really small. And so when things happen in high school, it could feel like the end of the world. And what you realize later on in life is just how big the world is, right? And something that might seem like the end of the world, whether it's you don't do well at a meet, or whether it's you fail an assignment or a class, like, these things are not going to define you, right? That doesn't mean live life willy-nilly, right? Like, you want to be intentional in your life, but high school is one beautiful, fun, exciting chapter of your life, and there's so much more beyond it. So, um, as much as you can, recognize that that high school is just a part of your life. Get as much out of it, make deep, meaningful relationships, and then know that the best is yet to come, or that there are other, you could reimagine yourself, right? There are so many possibilities for yourself that you don't yet see. And that's also why coaches are so important, because coaches, parents, they sometimes say things to us that like make no sense at all. And that's because they have a sense of how much bigger the world is and what opportunities there are, right? So I guess keep that in mind. I wish when I was in high school that I didn't let something like failing a test think that, oh, then I'm never going to get into college and I'm never going to be successful, and never, like, in reality, people fail things all the time. If you're not failing something, you're actually not learning and growing. So keep that in mind.
Yeah. I remember a conversation that you and I had previously too, where I think you said, I wish someone would have told me that. I think we were talking about bodies, but that just change, bodies are constantly changing.
Everything changes. Yeah.
And I think more broadly, everything changes. Like,
Yeah.
that is something that is certain, is that things will change.
Yeah.
So whatever place we're in, it's not going to be like that forever, right? I mean, that's
Exactly.
kind of
Exactly.
the
And
human
I do want to underscore that piece about bodies changing, because there's so much pressure, or there can be a lot of pressure, both internal and external, for athletes to be a certain size or look a certain way. And I want you to remember that you have a lifetime of competing, of moving your body, right? So you want to make decisions that allow you to move your body as long as possible. You don't want to make decisions for right now that put yourself under so much stress and duress that you stop being able to play or compete or live healthily at 18 years old. Imagine, right? I'm 38. Like, the past 20 years of my life have been beautiful. So just keep that in mind. It's like, when the pressure, it feels like I have to be this. Try to keep in mind that you want to have a lifetime of movement, because movement is about connection. It's about mental health. It's about so much more than winning or losing.
Yeah. Awesome. Is there any last things that you'd want to say to this group, Alison? And they're, just so you know, they're starting to race this week. This is the first week of in league meets, and they'll be going through to the end of May.
This is cliche, but enjoy it, right? Like, there's probably a bunch of races on your calendar, and maybe there's like something that like you're already thinking about, oh, this meet that's happening like a month from now. But try to enjoy the moment. Like, when you're running, try to really be in that moment and feeling how powerful you are, and celebrate that. Like, how cool you get to be on a team with other folks who really care about you, and run really fast or throw really far or jump really high. Make sure you celebrate all of that.
Thanks for sharing that. And I actually, maybe I have one more thing to ask, because I think of you as a role model, somebody for people to look towards, to bring hope. And I'm curious if you have any other, like, if you would share any role models or inspirational figures that you've come across, especially in writing in your book. I think and I hope all of you have the opportunity to read Alison's book, but kind of a lot of the history that hasn't been said, and in the research that Alison did in the book, coming across these amazing people. And so I'm curious if there's any inspirational figures or role models that you'd want to share that these athletes could be exposed to and hear about and look up themselves.
Totally. Well, I'm going to answer that, but I want to say one other thing first, that your generation, I am so thankful for and excited about, because my generation and older generations have not taken issues like climate change seriously enough. And when I see kids your age, the things that you all are talking about and that you're focused on at such a young age, I mean, you literally will be saving the world and setting us on a whole other path. So y'all inspire me, first of all. But in terms of athletes, a few athletes that you must know: Ted Corbett. Ted Corbett is called the father of long distance running. He was a Black guy that ran 100-mile weeks. He ran to and from work. He's the person that actually codified the marathon distance. Before him, marathons were sometimes 26.3 miles, 25.9, and he standardized the marathon distance at 26.2 miles. He was a Black man in this country during a time when of segregation. So he would often go to track events. Imagine you go to a track event and the white kids get to stay in nice, proper housing, and he had to stay in subpar, segregated housing. And he's just contributed so much to the sport. So look up Ted Corbett and tell everyone you know about him. Marilyn Bevans is another incredible athlete, a Black woman marathoner that set so many records in the marathon, broke so many barriers. She was a contemporary, which means she lived at the same, well, she's alive, but she was racing at the same time as Catherine Switzer, which many people know. She was the first woman to run the Boston Marathon as a registered participant. So lots of people know Catherine Switzer. Not a lot of people know Marilyn Bevans. So I would start there. And whenever you're reading something in history class, think about what stories are not being told, right? Get curious about the way history is being told and why are you learning these stories and not other stories? And that's when you really start to get to the good stuff.
Yeah. And again, another plug to read Alison's book. She has a lot to say about history, and it blows your mind. It's awesome. So thank you, Alison, for being willing to do this video. Athletes, I hope you enjoyed what you learned today from Alison. And I just want to say that one exciting thing here is we have a fun giveaway. So the first 5 athletes that message me on Instagram at opal, OPAL.movement. So opal, OPAL.movement. You will receive Alison's book for free. And what you need to do when you message opal.movement is share with me your name and the school you attend, and I'll be sure to give a copy of Alison's book to your coach during this track season. And if you are willing and want to, feel free to write something in the message that you learned from this video. And coaches, I will also have copies of Alison's book to a copy for each of your school's programs. So I will be distributing that with Elizabeth Carey during the track season. So I'll come find you as well. So thank you. And hopefully next track season, we can make this happen. Thanks, Alison, for your time. And I hope student athletes, you're inspired by Alison and her work. So cheers. See you in track season.
Thanks, everyone.